welcome to the Integrate This EdTech Podcast. Today we have kind of a little bit of a different episode. We are in our conference center right now in Wilmer for the IT² Conference, and we've been doing sessions all day. It's been a good day so far. We got to go to one session in particular that was really great, the Happy Caveman, and we are joined today, luckily, by Joe Beckman, the breakout session speaker for that session. And Joe, why don't you introduce yourself? We're happy to have you here as a guest and give us a little background on your journey.
Well, thanks for having me. Number one, I have never recorded a podcast in a pool area before, and I'm so excited that I get to have the conversation with both of you. And so a little bit about my background. I'm a speaker and an author. I grew up in St. Paul, Minnesota, went to school there and went to college at St. John's. And my hope was that I was going to be a performer someday, be on stage, whether it was theater or film or commercial. And along the way, I found that I had this huge passion for kids, and just through certain, life circumstances, I ended up finding an organization that did retreats in schools. And for 12 years, I led those, and I loved being a part of it. But I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. And I thought, what if I could create my own version of this, my own brand, my own mission around human connection, which is like the one thing that I'm somewhat good at. And what if I could create that and share that with as many people as possible? And that was 10 years ago. And after a lot of C-, D+, maybe F+ performances, we've learned a few things along the way. We've gotten better at tightening up our message. We've grown our company. It's not just Joe Beckman anymore or Happy Caveman. We have a larger team, and we're doing work to support districts all across the country with, motivating keynotes, but also professional development, stuff that we're doing with students. We have a digital platform that talks about, mental health and social emotional learning. And so it's been really fun to be a part of this journey.
Yeah, awesome. Like we have no experience with improvement over time and
Right.
and C+, D- type work,
Yeah.
With anywhere within that range here. But, one of the things that I really appreciated, not just from the breakout session that I saw you in earlier today, but also looking ahead a little bit towards the keynote address, which you're going to give at the IT² Conference tomorrow. Can't help but notice the importance of the relationships and the human connections.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that and how that plays a central role, not in just your message, but in, how we could be better humans because of that?
Yeah. Well, I think we live in a really complicated world, and there's a lot of things going around right now that make life complicated. But when you break it down and we can get underneath some of that complication into some more simplicity, I think that's where we meet human connection. There was a study, and has been a study, the longest longitudinal study in our country. The last 80 years, Harvard has been doing it. And they've been asking people at the end of their lives, what were the things when they look back and when they think about joy and contentment and happiness? And imagine somebody was asking you those questions. You had a few weeks left to live. They've been doing this for 80 years. Nobody has ever talked about money. Nobody ever has talked about status or the amount of likes they got on an Instagram post. Nobody ever talks about stuff. What people have been talking about for the last 80 years, and what I believe, if we do it right, what we will need to continue to talk about for the next 80 years is the one thing that got us here in the first place, which is quality relationships. And that's very different than quantity relationships. The quality relationships that I have with my children, the quality relationships that I have with my spouse, significant others, quality relationship that we have with our community, and maybe for educators, most importantly, the quality relationships that we have with our students and our coworkers. And what we found is that those relationships don't just magically happen. They take work, they take effort, they take investment, and all of them are founded on good old-fashioned human connection.
Do you think there's a danger in this technological time and with the accessibility that us as adults have, that students have, with constant access to devices, to disconnect from some of that? And is that something that scares you, or that, we should be worried about? And I know, like, a lot of schools, and I think to their credit, are implementing a lot more stringent cell phone policies and how
Yeah.
they're not available to students in the classroom to kind of recenter some of that focus. But
Yeah.
you know, what do you think of that?
Well, it's interesting because I think every society believes they know everything that because we know as much as we know in this moment. But when we look back, we did some pretty stupid things about 40 years ago. 40 years ago, I was born 46 years ago in a hospital in St. Paul. The doctor looked at my mom and said, rest and relax. What that meant to my mom was to pull out a cigarette, pull out a lighter, and smoke it in the hospital. And here's the crazy thing. A doctor wouldn't have come in and said, put that out, you are in a hospital. They might have said in 1979, do you want an ashtray? We were so backwards with this addiction around smoking because we knew so little that we did some really stupid things. And now we look back with all the wisdom in the world and say, what idiots, what were we thinking? Did we not know the consequences? Well, I can't help but think 40 years from now, they're not going to look back at us and go, you mean you gave an 8-year-old an iPad for 8 hours a day and you didn't think it would have any kind of impact? That might sound as stupid as smoking a cigarette in a hospital. So yeah, I am concerned. Scared is I don't know. I don't really get too scared. I always feel like there are solutions to all problems. But I do think it starts with awareness. And I think it starts by understanding that just like there was big tobacco when it came to the cigarette addiction, there certainly is big tech. And there are people making millions of dollars doing everything they can to get us to look down because it makes them more money. And how they do it is through releasing the same chemical in our brains that cigarettes do, dopamine. So every ring, every ding, every notification has been strategically designed to get us to get that dopamine rush, which becomes addictive.
Right.
Which is why we can't get off our screens. And so there's a lot of concerns that I have when it comes to looking down all the time. But yeah.
Have you had a chance to read the book Stolen Focus
by
Johann Hari?
No, but I
because you're talking about like one of his premises of the book is exactly that.
Yeah.
And he even talks about like how apps like Twitter or X, and you have the continuous scroll, and you just keep going because you want to see what that next thing is, and just how that is designed purposely to be that. You know, it's trying to tap into those sensory things within our brain that stimulates that type of a response, which further disconnects us. And, and I think too that. So if you get a chance to check that book out, I think you're going to connect with that really, really well.
That's a phenomenal option. I've read some of his other books and he's awesome. And then The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt is also a phenomenal read.
That's on my list. I'm waiting to get that from the public library.
Well, once you get it, it's awesome. So, and I do think it's great that schools are moving forward in this direction and that leaders are starting to see, because the data is coming back, that less connection leads to more problems, social emotional problems, confidence problems, engagement problems. And so what we also know is human connection is a practice. It's like basketball. It's like podcasting. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And when we rob kids of opportunities to get good at human connection, we're doing them a huge disservice. One example would be when I see parents order for their kids at restaurants and they allow their kid to stay on their phone and be on their iPad, and they don't give the kid the opportunity to look up and make eye contact and practice maybe what feels like an awkward conversation, but it will be less awkward the more you practice it. And so if we rob kids of little opportunities to practice connection, they're going to get weak at it. And then we're going to, as adults, get frustrated. The kids these days, and they don't do this and they can't make eye contact. Well, I couldn't speak a different language if no one ever taught me how to do it beforehand. You know what I mean? So these skills are something that need to get taught and built and, prioritized.
Yeah. And can we talk a little bit too about just how when so much of what we heard in your breakout session and the stuff that is part of your work is about human connection. With us, part of what we're doing is working in the AI space.
Yeah.
And what we've seen recently is some data that we have kids that are abdicating their own responsibility for work. That's one side where you have the cognitive offloading. So they're not doing any of the work. But then there's a social component too, where we now see that there are kids that would rather spend time talking to an AI chatbot as opposed to another human being or a peer. What are your thoughts around that? Like, obviously that's a huge negative. What are your concerns in that area? And do you see any positives too with some of that?
I think the positive to a lot of technology is efficiency. And that is super alluring. And in society in general, anytime we can find an easier way to do anything, that feels awesome. But sometimes the easy things and the right things aren't the same things.
Mm-hmm.
And so my thought is this, like, I am a huge advocate for alternative education. We're meeting kids where they're at. And for some kids, learning is better done in a virtual setting for whatever reason. And I guess we could dive down, but from social reasons or whatever. And so I'm not anti like virtual learning or anything like that, but I do think it's even more important that if we are teaching kids in those spaces, that we find more opportunities to give them, time to practice connection. And whether that's parents being intentional about that, or whether that's schools being intentional about finding times where, their online program can find some human connection or whatever it may be. I just think it's even more important. And we don't lose that in the process just because it's easier for kids to learn in this certain way, because these social skills need to get practiced.
So as far as like when teachers are coming into contact with students, and this is actually touching on some of the tools that you brought up and took us through in Happy Caveman, the thing that I'm kind of wondering is, what are the little wins that they can start to do? So if you're going back to your classroom today or the next day, what are the things that can help with making some of those connections? Or even too, you talked about the importance of maybe it's not even that you can reach out to somebody else at this time, but thinking about what are little wins for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I have 3 ideas that teachers could certainly implement into their classroom starting tomorrow. But before we get to those, like you said, I do think it starts by looking into the mirror and really, taking the time to do some self-reflection, some inventory around where we're putting our focus and our time and our energy. And like we talked about today in the breakout, when we put our time and energy into places that we value, we generally show up for others better. And so without getting too far down that rabbit hole, I think it's really important that we're good to ourselves. And sometimes people are like, oh, let's do a yoga retreat or go to a happy hour with your friends. Like, put on your own mask first. And all that is great, but all those are little band-aids. And I think deeper is when we know what we value, we have self-awareness, and then we actively pursue choices that are in line with those values. And I think that's a really helpful way that we can help ourselves show up as the best version of ourselves so that we can make connections. Now, if we've done that, or even if we're not doing that, if we're looking for small wins to build connection in classrooms, first thing I would suggest is music. What do you mean? Have music as kids are walking into your classroom, or if you're doing a virtual setting, have music as they're checking in or whatever it may be. Music is one of those easy things that people connect to, and it's a universal language. And another thing of like, just kind of sets the tone. It's fun. I always tell teachers, maybe you let the students pick the song that people walk into that day. And then that kid gets to go in the middle and share why they chose that song or what that music means to them. It just is an easy way to build connection. So music, having music loaded up or just playing or whatever it may be, that's awesome.
And honestly, I think a teacher could, at the beginning of a semester or some sort of a term, have that be a question. I mean, a lot of teachers, to get to know you, kind of ask questions like, why not ask them, what's your walk-up song?
Your walk-up song. Yeah. The song and then, you would want to walk into the classroom.
If you think,
and then all of a sudden it shows
so-and-so
up on a random
looked
Friday.
like they were having a bad day. Yeah. And I could lift their spirits if I play their walk-up song as they're walking into the room.
And it's easy. You don't have to have the guitar. You don't have to be a good singer. You use other people to, be the experts on that. So music is awesome. I know it sounds silly and it's not for everybody, but I'm a big fan of greeting them at the door and just, how you doing? High five, maybe a funny nickname. Little things like that just help build a little bit of a connection and remind kids that you're happy that they're in your class. I think that helps. And then the last thing, we'll talk about this tomorrow, is story, using the power of story. I don't know if you noticed today in my breakout, I told several stories. And part of that is because it's a great way for me to build trust between me and my audience. And once you know that I've gone through certain things that I've gone through that are maybe different, but his life isn't perfect, or we did he did something similar to that. Stories are an amazing way to build trust and engagement. And if you tell stories where your things didn't work out perfectly for you, I think it builds that connection because kids can empathize and relate, and they don't think you've got it all figured out.
Showing that vulnerability,
exactly,
and having that humility when you do mess up, that you're going to,
because you're the
gonna
leader, because you're the teacher, because they see you up here. When you chop yourself off at the knees a little bit, oh my gosh, it levels the playing field. And I'm much more likely to listen to your lesson about physics because you told me that 5-minute story about how you used to love riding your Harley Davidson when you were younger, or whatever it may be. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That story builds all that connection and trust, which allows for more engagement.
It makes sense. It cuts the tension a little bit. Like, like you don't have, not everyone has to have it all put together. I like that about your sessions right away, because starting with the where everybody was part of this rock paper scissors tournament. Yeah. Which is impromptu. I mean, I know you probably thought like this is what we're going to do, right? Yeah. But for us coming into the session, it's kind of like we didn't expect it, and it was a way where we all got to engage with people in the room that we otherwise wouldn't have, and that was great, I thought. So,
but did you notice when you walked in there was music playing? Yes, came in, and I strategically did that, and I also had slides of like memes and different things, but really the music piece is in. When I don't have it, it feels so weird now.
Sure,
like it just feels stale and off. And so sometimes people come in raising their shoulders and they're smiling and it gives me something to talk to them about. And so it's been a real value add.
And a hesitant person in the hallway that's like figuring out what session to go to. Maybe that piques their interest, right?
Exactly. Or
say for a kid coming into a class too, it's kind of like, I don't know if I really want to walk in today. Yeah. Mr. Berner's going to have that terrible lesson. I just know it.
Exactly.
So one of the things that I noticed, and you're wearing one now, I love your face.
Yeah.
And you had us do these things in this breakout several different times, right? Where you turn to the person by you and give a little high five and stuff to them. I mean, they seem a little gimmicky.
Yeah.
You know, but do you think, obviously I could see the importance of it, those small little things again here, but now, you know, what are some of those things that you think really help kids gain the confidence or resilience, you know, some of those character traits that we want them to be able to build within our classrooms by just even offering them some sort of simple phrase? Do you think, is that like a little trigger, or is that like a thing that you think works?
You know how as a teacher, you sometimes try things and you're like, well, oh my gosh, that worked, sort of thing. It was like one of those where as a speaker early on, when I was first starting, I have to now put together not a 15-minute talk, but a 60-minute talk. And I have to try to keep them engaged the whole time. And yet I have to jump from thing to thing. And so I started adding in what I call commercial breaks to my talks to help break it up. And now I have fancier commercial breaks. Like I have my guitar and I'll have videos. But back in the day when I didn't have either of those, I would just have them turn to someone else to the left or right, give them a high five and say something. And one time I said, turn to somebody, give them a high five and say, I love your face. And lo and behold, they all did it. And then 6 months later, I got a call from the principal that says they can't stop saying the stupid phrase, I love your face. But
I'd much rather they said that than 6'7".
Than 6'7" or whatever it may be. And I also think in general, we want to be good. Like we want to do good. We want to be good. We want to leave a positive legacy. And sometimes we just need that push and that permission. And sometimes even the on-ramp on here's something you can even say that will allow you to be good. Like if I were to say, hey, go up to somebody and say, you're beautiful. Like nobody would do that. But if you say, go up and say, I love your face, which kind of means the same thing. Mm-hmm. Like it's weird enough that they do it. And you give kids the on-ramp and the opportunity to do something good and say something positive, and lo and behold, like they do it,
and it snowballs.
It snowballs. It's contagious.
Right?
Just like every other negative thing that we see, like it snowballs and it's contagious. So if we can give them the positive things to say, do, respond to, then I think some of that is half the battle.
Isn't there like I'm picturing this commercial that I must have seen this one time where someone like starts out by holding a door open for someone. That person walks through the door into a restaurant or something, and someone had dropped their napkin and they reach over and they pick it up and they hand it back to them, who then they turn and they give the waiter a nice tip, and who then turns around, you know, like that's that snowball effect that's taking place.
But here's the snowball to the snowball. What that video doesn't show is all the people surrounding all these kind acts who saw all these other people. All you see is the ripple effect of like what happened right
in
there
that
in those
linear
characters,
line.
that linear line. But I kind of look back, and because what science is proving and is that not only those random acts of kindness, not only do they benefit the person you are kind to, and obviously they benefit you as a human, but anybody who even witnesses it, sees it, hears it, it benefits them, and they're more likely to go do that. And so I'd be interested in that commercial to see like almost like a 60,000 view map up top from a drone, and to see like all the goodness that happened out from that linear line that is in the commercial, if that makes sense.
And I know Jeremy and I, we probably shouldn't have sat by each other in the session, because after I was like, I should have sat by someone I didn't really know, because we ended up just giving each other high fives and saying "I love your face" to each other the whole time.
Just what you do already, bro.
Yeah, we're together all the time. So, but it was still good. And
but we can't high five when we're
that's right.
Not
yeah, can only do it here.
Yeah.
So as far as like when you're thinking about positivity and happiness, you had mentioned that's something that you can set yourself up for success in that.
Yeah.
And I think
it's not inherent; it can still be learned.
Yeah, I like that you made the point in the session where it was like, there's definitely, it's not like pretending that. Yeah, there's some people that are up here a little bit more, and they're just naturally, they have that kind of natural high and they're happy. But it doesn't mean that someone who doesn't have that can't put that into practice, or and set themselves up for success in that. So can you talk a little bit about when the phrase "when we feel good, we do good" and how that connects to that?
Yeah. I think the quote really is from Abraham Lincoln, and he says, "When I do good, I feel good." And I thought, that's pretty good. But what if we flipped it? What do we need to first, before we do the good? I think the feel the good part is pretty important as well. And so I take this quote from Abraham Lincoln, who's one of the most famous people in the history of the world, and I butcher it and I switch it around and I try to make it that's something a little bit more relevant. But I do think that good that we want to give towards others, we all want to do it, but we limit ourselves when we're not at our best. And so the program today kind of really talked about what are some small practices that we can do so that when we can feel the best version that we can feel, so that we can do as much good for others as possible. But yeah, I think it's just kind of a different philosophy in that a lot of times we focus on others, which I think is great, and then we feel good about ourselves. But I like to flip it and say, let's start here. Let's get this part right, and then think about all the amazing good we could do for others after that. But
so I see like teacher mental health and teacher wellness, self-care comes up a lot at PD workshops and things that I go to.
Yep.
Is that, kind of the reason is because we do face situations where teachers they're struggling with that group of students this year, right? And they're thinking, maybe I'm not in the right field, and is that by itself going to be enough, or do they have to dig deeper, look further inward to kind of find whatever success that they need to turn things around?
Yeah. I mean, I think it really is. It's one of those things where, like, specifically in education, it has really never been harder to be a teacher with all the different factors that are going on outside of your control. I've had plenty of elementary teachers say, I've been doing this a long time. I never used to get bit in the leg, and now I get bit in the leg almost on a monthly basis, right? I've been doing this. It's never been as hard as it has been. And it's easy to blame COVID, and it's easy to blame that, but let's drop that excuse at this point. I think that added a little fuel on the fire. But I think part of the reason it's never been harder, is, because our engagement has gone down so much, and it's really hard to get a kid to focus in on a lesson that you want to teach them for 20 minutes or 30 minutes when they're used to 15-second reels since they've been 7 years old or whatever it may be. And so I think it is harder, and I think more is getting put on teachers' plate than ever before. And I think a lot of the work that they got into it for ends up not being the work that they do, if that makes sense. And it can be really easy to burn out in that situation.
So if you're a school leader, you got some sort of an administrative role,
Yeah.
If you could suggest something to a school leader to help take something off the plate of their teachers so that they're not getting to that point, what would you suggest to them that they try to do?
For a school leader, what
For a
they
school
can
leader,
do to
yeah.
take out the hard part about that is the school leaders already got 15 things that have been added to their plate.
Mhm.
And so now we're asking more for them to do for,
So where does
for
that stop?
others. So where does that stop, right?
Yeah.
Would we ask for the superintendent to help them or whatever it may be? And so you could go down that, you know, what could an admin, I just think part of an admin's role is to make sure that when their people walk into the building every day, they have a place where they feel like they can belong. They have a place that is a living, breathing sort of entity of what we all talk about as adults to kids. We want more empathy, more kindness, more inclusiveness. We want people to feel they have a voice at the table and a place that they belong. And I think part of the role as an admin is to create that space where people, the adults, feel like they have a place at the table. They feel like they can belong, because there's a lot of the things that are coming at teachers, you know, get thrown at teachers. I don't know if we can magically make those go away, but if I have to take all of that on top of the fact that I feel like people are talking about me behind my back and I'm walking on eggshells every time I walk into the building, and it feels super negative in the teacher's lounge. And that is, like, I believe, where we get to that burnout stage.
Yeah.
We can only take so much of that on top of all the other things. And then the last thing I would say is the number one reason people leave the field of education is financial, but the second one is because of lack of recognition. And so if there was ever an opportunity as an admin to write small handwritten notes to your staff and say, hey, I see you, I appreciate you, or to take 15 minutes at the end of a staff meeting to do gratitude shout outs, or to somehow continue to remind the teachers and the staff and the custodians and the IT directors and all the different people that make a school go, like, to make sure they feel appreciated. And that's something every administrator has control over. You can control that.
Yeah, and I can tell you too, like, well, for one, the one thing that I guess is important then is what you're saying is to keep consistent is opportunities for human connection, because there's no way you can just all of a sudden snap your finger and a couple of tasks are off your plate, or even if you, all these ones that are on your plate, there's always the element of like actually doing them well, which is difficult the more you have on your plate.
Yeah.
But if you do have opportunities for human connection, you can kind of set those things aside and get to the heart of why you're there at the school district. I know it made me think of, when you were talking about that, it made me think about, there was the first superintendent I ever had at my school that I taught at first. His name was Bob Tews. Every single morning, the one thing he made sure he did was to stand outside the school and greet everybody that came into the school. Teachers,
Superintendent?
Yes, that was
awesome.
He always made sure that was something he did, and I can't tell you the amount of times, even after I stopped working there, got a job at a different school, the amount of people I ran into that knew Bob that referenced that thing that he did.
Interesting.
Which was kind of incredible, because it was this small thing where it took a little bit of time out of his morning to go outside and just say good morning to people, but everybody remembered it.
Yep.
It's just crazy. And
yeah.
I think it gets overlooked.
And here's what I'd say. If number one, some people might say, well, that's just not me. That's Bob. Bob's good at that. I'm not good at that. Even if Bob wasn't good at, I don't even know if that was in his wheelhouse or not, but that could have completely been outside his wheelhouse, and he did it anyway.
Yeah.
And the fact that he did it anyway, or if you're an administrator listening to this and you're not good at that stuff, or you're a teacher and you're not good at the fact that you even attempt it and try it, your people see that, whether it's students or staff, and they appreciate the fact that they see you stepping outside of your comfort zone, because that's what we ask for our people every single day. So when you model it as a leader, I think it's awesome. So anybody who's saying, well, that's not me, that would be even more of a reason to do it, because it's not you and it's outside of your comfort zone. And sometimes we have to do hard things, and people appreciate that. So I love it.
Yeah, I really like how that it comes back to the human connection again, and you're going out of your way to continue making those connections with people, even if it is outside of your comfort zone, because you don't know what kind of snowball effect that's going to have, and where that's going to, if we want to go back to our other example that we talked about, it kind of leads right back into that.
Well, imagine you're a substitute teacher or a guest teacher and you're walking into that building for the first time and you know nobody. You don't even know where the office is. And all of a sudden somebody's there to say, hey, welcome. We appreciate you. And it sounds so small, but it's like as a speaker, like when I go into a school and the first interaction that I have is positive, it sets the tone for the day and it makes a huge difference. And so, and now that guest teacher goes in and does a better job or feels more wants to come back to that school, has a better experience. I just think it adds value all the way around.
So we're getting back, I think, to the theme of human connection here again, right? And how urgent is it now to reclaim that human connection from, I'm not blaming COVID. I'm not, I don't want to necessarily just blame the distraction of devices and things like that, but I do see a tendency, like you talked about, kids that they get to a restaurant and having dinner with their parents and they're down on their devices the whole time. I've seen adults do the same thing.
Yeah.
Like how urgent is this message to start to reclaim that human connection?
Yeah, I mean, there's no timetable, right? It's not like if it's not done by April 15th, 2026, watch out. But it's like, I don't know, like I feel like our joy and our happiness and like is at stake, and our kids' success in future is at stake. And so I don't know, I think it's pretty important that we start talking about it right now. And the reason too is like when you start looking at the numbers, they studied kind of mental health and where we were at over the last 20 years. And there was a gradual like uptick and then a sudden spike in the year 2011, between 2011 and 2023, basically. And so you look back, what was that uptick in? Why is that political? Was it our divided communities? What's happening? And that's the year the iPhone was saturated into the market. It was introduced in 2007, but it didn't get fully saturated. 85% of people had one in 2011. They call that market saturation. And that is the time, once these saturated the market, where you see an uptick and then a sudden spike in depression, anxiety, self-harm, ideation. All of them have gone up while human connection has gone down. And so those numbers are going to continue to go up unless we somehow counterbalance it. And so what we also know is like, is this urgent? Yeah, because sometimes we go, well, that's just a different kid in a different community in a different zip code. No, it's not the kid in the back of the room with the hood up and the earbuds in anymore. It's the young girl in the front row with their hand raised in the air and the kid on the outside that looks like they have it all together. And I just think it's more of a problem and it's more urgent than ever that we start, really leaning in to prioritizing human connection for our kids' sake, for our own mental health sake.
Yeah. And despite that, do you think there are signs, positive signs of changes that are or can be made that are being done?
Yeah. I mean, number one, schools are doing a much better job of becoming cell phone free or putting different things. Is that what you're talking about from like a school standpoint or a society standpoint?
And if that's going to tip the needle, back into helping us in the situation that we're facing.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I feel like we're kind of going to be on this like needle tip for a very long time. And I don't think technology is ever going to go away. We're going to continue to innovate. We're going to continue to find easier ways to do things, more efficient ways to do things. And that is really awesome. But we just cannot lose the connection piece along the way with that efficiency.
Do you think AI is a threat to that?
I think AI is a threat. I mean, the stuff that I'm listening to, like sometimes I hear it and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's going to be so amazing. And then sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, smoke them if you got them because we're gone in about 5 years. You know what I mean? So it'll be really interesting to see kind of where AI goes in the next 5 years. It's going to be crazy, the stuff I was listening to somebody the other day. They said, tell me what's going to happen in 2050. Like there's things that are happening right now that we wouldn't even be able to describe. It'd be like trying to describe the iPhone to somebody in the 1700s. You couldn't do it. It's going to be such, technological advancements. And I'm hoping that those advancements are used in the right way to reduce sickness, to improve, efficiency in many ways. But I'm worried that these skills of human connection will get lost along the way.
And just as a follow-up to that, one of the things that as we go and train on AI, we do that with schools and we kind of give them, an overview of AI and really focus on what are the things that they can do within their profession to make their job a little bit easier.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that people are hopeful about, I know I think about this, and Jeremy and I have talked about this too in previous podcasts, but if allowing teachers to use AI, hopefully in a way that will allow them to free up some of their time,
Yes.
so that when you talk about human connection, it will open some of those doors where they can interact with students
Yes.
more and not spend so much time with overwhelming lesson planning and grading and all those different types of things, because you'll be able to do that piece of it more efficiently. Are you hopeful about that aspect of it at all?
I'm hopeful about that, and I'm hopeful about how AI can be used to help collaboration. So like, imagine you have all these great ideas and things that you've used, and now you bring that out to your larger team, and now your team is sharing some ideas together. And if that AI was the reason that your team was able to come together to share ideas, to collaborate, and to meet, that builds human connection.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, how do we not use AI? And I'm thinking of this for my own kids and stuff, to put them into a silo where they go, oh, I don't need anybody else in my life. I can just ask ChatGPT and I'll figure it out. I don't have to do anything on my own that's hard. I'll just ask ChatGPT and they'll answer the question for me instead of me having to have that conversation. So I think it's the amazingness, the efficiency that it's going to, allow us to have is awesome. But I want that extra time that we gain because of the efficiency. I would love it to be used and then invested, almost like you put money and invest in your bank or whatever, to be used on more connection and collaboration.
Yeah, Joe, we're kind of hitting up on the end of our time here, because we're recording between two different sessions of a conference.
Yeah.
And I actually present during the next session and have to pack stuff up here. But, before we go, what do you have going on that you think you would like to share to our audience, or things? Do you have a project you're working on, or you want to give a shout out to some organization? What can we do to help promote you?
Yeah, I would say, we're always working on different projects. If you're a school or administrator or a district and you're looking for support for your staff or your students, we'd love to have the conversation. We travel all over the country, but we'd love to do more stuff in our home state of Minnesota. Selfishly, it allows us to impact people in and around us, but also selfishly allows me to sleep in my own bed at night and be around my family a little bit more and not travel as much. But so we're constantly, continuing to build new talks. We have professional development around classroom management and relationships and environment and leadership. And we have this really cool new thing for students. It's called our leadership toolkit. And it's kind of a bite-sized version of a bigger platform that schools can use, that will give them just a little bit of a shot in the arm for their student leaders. It has videos and lessons and activities that go along with it. And we're really excited about rolling that out, because not every school can bring in a speaker and not every school is ready for a big event, but we want to start creating smaller bite-sized products that schools can use. And so that's one of them we're excited about.
And where can those people reach out and find you?
Till360.com. That's
Perfect.
it. Or joe@till360.com, and they can connect with me personally.
And we'll definitely link that into the show notes,
Sweet.
So that you can get right to it.
And to the books as well. Got the 2 books, right? So
Just Look Up and Just Look Back. So
All right. Great. Well, thanks, Joe. Appreciate
absolutely. Thanks for
Glad
having
you could
me.
join
Hey, we
us.
can actually shake someone's hand.
There
here.
you go. Awesome. Very good.
it.
I
One
love
time,
it.
right?
Yeah, the one time.